doctors. I know in the current circumstances it is really quite hard to get work experience. They're going to look at your score on a piece of paper and just put you in the no pile. Preparation is key. Getting into medical school, a lot of it really is on applying strategically. My channel. So today's video is going to be a highly requested one, and that is a step-by-step guide on how to get into a medical school and how to get all 4 of your medicine offers, specifically in the UK, but a lot of these points will count for all medical schools across the world. Now, when I was applying to medicine, I could have really done with a video like this, so I really hope you find today's video helpful, and if you do, it means so much if you give it a big thumbs up, and also if you would click that subscribe button and decide to stick around. There really is going to be so much more medicine content, but also a bit of health, vegan, beauty. There really is something for everyone on this channel, so I would love if you decided to join the family and subscribe. And if you are not new, then welcome back. I hope you are all doing amazing. Let's get on with today's video. For those of you that know the process for medicine in the UK, it is not easy. It is not like a normal course to apply for. There are so many different steps that you need to approach, and I'm just going to break it down for you today in a really easy step-by-step guide that you can follow. Make sure you're hitting all of those points to get you into all 4 medical schools and get you to the medical school that you really want to go to. Make sure you watch till the end of the video, because step number 7 is all about interviews, which are so important, and some of my most important tips will be there. Just to start with, I'm just going to say a little bit more about my journey to a medical school, but if you want to see a whole explanation of how I got here, what I did, and I made a whole separate video on that, and I will put the link in the description bar below. I applied to Birmingham, Leicester, Bristol and Nottingham, and I got all 4 of my offers, which I was so happy about. And I'm going to be explaining today how you can do the same, how you can get all 4 of your offers, and really the tips and tricks and secrets that not many people will tell you. Firstly, we're going to start with the basics, and that is the grades and your entry requirements. Really, the standard offer you are looking at after your A-levels is AAA. This is very typical for most medical schools, and as far as I know, I don't think you can get in without AAA, and it is so important to make sure you hit your grades. Some universities will be looking for A-star AA, and others like Cambridge look for 2 A stars and an A, which I did not get. I got A-star AA, so I did hit my grades first time. If you can, just work so hard for your A-levels. It is really important to get your 3 A's, and you make your life a lot easier if you do. At the end of the day, A-levels are such a stressful time, and you do have to work really hard, but those grades are going to stick with you for life, and it's just really important that you kind of put your all into it. I've always thought of it as exam season is a really short, busy, hectic season, but it doesn't last forever. If you work hard during this time and get your results, then it does help you out so much in the long run, especially for applying for a course like medicine. Also, your GCSE grades do matter. So for some universities, they're going to take into consideration a lot more. So somewhere like Birmingham, it's actually a point system. So it is important to get good GCSE grades. However, there are ways around this, which I will explain later on in the video. The most important part is making sure you get your 3 A's at A-level over your GCSEs, but it does help you out if you have good GCSE grades as well. What subjects do you need to take? So I've banged on about this enough, but you do need to take biology and chemistry ideally. Most medical schools will ask for chemistry, and the majority will ask for biology or human biology, and it does help you out a lot as well in terms of learning the course. It's much easier if you have a kind of bit of biology background. However, your 3rd one really is up to you. Take one that you enjoy. The majority of universities just want you to get the 3rd one and have it as an A. Choose a subject that you enjoy, that you're good at. I stupidly took maths, but I did find it really hard and I didn't particularly enjoy it. So looking back, I probably wouldn't have taken maths, but if you have a real passion for maths, go ahead and take it. But all I'm saying is you don't need it. Don't feel pressurized to go for the classic maths, chemistry, biology that everyone goes for, because in reality it's not going to put you in any better position. Pick one that you enjoy. It's going to give you a little bit of break from the science subjects. If you don't hit your grades at A level, there really are ways around it. So you could always could take a gap year and retake, or you could go in as a postgraduate. So what some people do if they don't get their grades is they go in and do a graduate degree and then apply for medicine at postgraduate. Something to be aware of for this is it is even more competitive to apply as a postgraduate than it is straight out of A levels, which is exactly why I didn't want to apply as a postgraduate, because I feel medicine's competitive enough without it being even more competitive. So it's just something to bear in mind. I do know that if you are going in at postgraduate, they always look for like a 2-1, which might not seem that hard, but from speaking to my friends at university, getting a 2-1 is not a given at all. So now let's talk about something apart from grades, and probably the second most important thing is your work experience. Now, universities will be looking for work experience in your personal statements, but they're also going to help so much at interview, and it's also going to help you so much into understanding whether medicine is definitely the right career for you. 1 year before, you really need to be looking into getting some work experience, whether that is shadowing in a GP, shadowing in a hospital, even just talking to doctors. Getting just a general experience is so important, and it really shows you what life as a doctor is like. Not in these glamorous Grey's Anatomy, which makes it all look amazing. You're going to learn the real ins and outs and what the reality is of the career you're choosing. Work experience helped me so much in actually determining whether I want to do medicine, because I've not been around it a lot. It was so important to see. However, I know in the current circumstances it is really quite hard to get work experience. Obviously, with everything going on, the doctors and junior doctors are so stressed out. So your work experience, the reality is it might have been postponed, or you might be struggling to get it. So I would say just work your hardest at trying to get it or trying to move it to a later date, because a lot of your interviews aren't going to be until potentially October, and hopefully by then you might have been able to get some work experience and you'll still be able to draw on this in an interview. Whatever work experience you manage to get, the most important tip I can give you is to keep a diary and to make notes and really make the most of the whole time you have it there. Write it all down in a book or in a journal or in a little piece of paper, whatever you can, and think about each time, what have you learned from these situations? Not what are you doing. It's all well and good just saying, oh, I did this, I saw this, but that is not what the medical schools are interested in. They want to know what you took away from that situation, what you learned, what skills did you see yourself in that role, how do you think you would be good at that role. Really reflect on your time there, reflect on what you learned, and also learn a little bit about the negatives and the positives. Medical schools think it's so important that you've seen the negative side of medicine and you're not going in thinking this is really glamorized job. They love it when you draw from a negative situation and see the positives within it, or see what you would have done differently. Just drawing from each situation that you are put in and really making the most out of your time. So what I would argue is actually even more important is your volunteer work, and this is definitely something that you can still go out and get now, even in the current climate that we are living in. I loved my volunteer work. I volunteered at a disabled riding school with disabled children, and honestly I learned so much from this. You pick up so many skills, you learn a lot about yourself, and you can go and get volunteer work anywhere. So whether that is at an old people's home, hospice, St. John's ambulance, there are so many volunteer jobs out there. Medical schools love this on an application, and also like I said, if you think about doing this a year before, it shows really good continuity and commitment to medicine and also to work experience. They don't want someone that's just going to go for a month or two and then give up. They really love it when you've been volunteering for like a year, 2 years, and really giving up your time. You're not getting paid for this, you're doing it purely to give back, and you learn so many skills that are going to be helpful for the whole of your medical career. So I couldn't recommend going out and getting this now. Like, start now. Even if you're just unsure about whether to apply to medicine, get a volunteer job, and honestly it will help you understand so much more whether or not medicine is the career for you. Also, getting a job, any kind of job, counts as work experience, whether that's as a waitress, working in a supermarket, working as a receptionist. Any kind of job has so many transferable skills that really at interview and also in your personal statement, skills like teamwork, leadership will be really helpful. So don't think just having a normal paid job isn't worth your time. If you have the time at the moment to go and get a job outside of your A levels, then I would really recommend this. And if all of that fails and you still can't do any of that, then there are still a couple of extra things you can do. One of the most important things to do anyway is talk to as many medical professionals as you can, whether that's doctors, junior doctors, or either medical students. You might not be able to see them face to face right now, but phone them up or send them an email and just ask any questions. Honestly, I was shocked when I went out and spoke to doctors about how willing they are to talk about it, talk about the negatives, the positives, what they would do differently if they were you. They really just just want to help. You are the next doctors, and don't be afraid to ask any questions really. For me, I was really worried about balancing a family with life as a doctor, and they're just going to give you an honest answer, so just ask whatever question it is you have. And I would also say don't be afraid to contact people that you don't know particularly well. If it's like a friend of a friend, your sibling's friend that's a medical student, honestly, I think the medical profession are all really friendly, and it is a very much community feel, and everybody wants to help everyone. Honestly, anybody will talk to you about it. You just need to reach out. Another big thing you can do, which doesn't really count as work experience, but if you can't actually go out and get any physical work experience right now, then I think this is the best next thing. Read medical related books. One that you will all have heard of is This Is Going to Hurt. Everyone is obsessed with this book, and for a good reason. It might be quite negative, but if you can read this and still really want to do a career in medicine, then that is the first box ticked. If you get through this book and you're not really stressed out about a whole career and it doesn't put you off completely, then there must be quite a big part of you that wants to become a doctor. But there are so many books about doctors' stories and how they felt within the medical profession, and if you can't go out and see it firsthand right now, then the best next thing is reading all about it and listening to other people's stories. And I've got a couple of my other favourites. Now, The Language of Kindness is actually about a nurse, but I don't think enough people explain how similar nurses and other medical professionals are to doctors. You're not going to be the only one on the team. You'll learn this multidisciplinary team is thrown around a lot, and believe me, you have to have an understanding of what other people on your team do and also how they work, and you get an understanding for the ward and the hospital, and I really love this book. The other one is When Breath Becomes Air. I love this book. It's about a neurosurgeon and his story, and that's really interesting. And the next one is a little biased, and that is How Not to Die by Dr. McGregor. Now, this is really useful for when you write your personal statement or interviews, because it's all about how to look after your health through nutrition, which is a bit of a... It's not quite related, but if you're remotely interested in that, then it is helpful to do further reading around the subject, and also to have your understanding of what being a doctor is like. It's a very medical based book and goes through a lot of diseases. Go out and read as many books as you can. Even get a highlighter out. Not enough people highlight books with key points, so that when you're flicking back through them for interviews or for writing your personal statements, you can pick out little phrases that you really like from the books, so you can show that you know what it's really like, and not just go out and watch the whole of Grey's Anatomy. I mean, I've done that too, but it's not going to help you that much in comparison to reading real life books and real life stories. So the next part of your application is your personal statement. You have a very short character limit, and sometimes it can be really hard to try and fit in all of that passion and all of that experience, and I understand your struggle. I found this part really hard as someone that doesn't naturally structure their essays very well. I find it quite hard to structure a personal statement, especially when it is so short. However, my biggest advice weirdly for this would be don't stress out about it too much. Yes, it is important, and at some universities, once you're at the interview stage, they can use it sometimes to look at your application to decide between two people with exactly the same scores. However, other universities don't include it at all. It's very hard to determine who's written this personal statement. As much as you are supposed to write it yourself, a lot of people get varied amount of help with it. So a lot of medical schools have actually decided that no, they're not including it at all. So there are much bigger parts of your application to worry about, although it is still important to make sure you have a strong personal statement when you're applying, because you want to make your application as good as it possibly can be. So I've come up with 3 top tips for personal statements. Number 1 is to make it personal. Yeah, the clue is in the title, personal statement. You really want to make this statement stand out and be personal to you. You want to make yourself remembered. Imagine how many thousands of personal statements the application staff are reading. You want yours to be the one that stand out and they go, yes, that was Anna's personal statement. I remember that. Now, often I think this is really good at being linked in with experiences that made you realise you wanted to study medicine. But what you don't want to do is go out and use some really generic answer like, I broke my arm when I was 10 and ever since then I wanted to do medicine, or my mum and dad are doctors and I always knew growing up that I wanted to be a doctor, or being a doctor has always been my dream job. These are really cliches, so I would avoid including any of these altogether. You want to come up with a really original reason or a really original experience that made a career in medicine stand out to you. And what was it? What was that moment that you decided you wanted to be a doctor for certain? Leads me on to point 2. Make sure you explain the process. There aren't many people out there that will have gone, yeah, that's 100% what I want to do. I want to be a doctor. And in my opinion, medical schools really love it when you show that it was a gradual process of deciding you wanted to become a doctor, that you've shown that you've reflected upon it, you've really thought about what this career entails and how you've gone about doing that. So link it in with your work experience or the books you've read or the doctors you've spoken to, and really show a good solid understanding of what life as a doctor is like and why you think you would be suited to that. What skills do you have? And then point number 3, you want to show your skills. So at the end of the day, you are selling yourself, and it's so important to show your skills, but don't just list them. Don't say, I'm a good leader, or I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. You want to go, I did Gold DOV and that showed good leadership skills. Or I volunteered in an old people's home and that showed my commitment to the medical career, but also built upon my listening skills and my teamwork skills, working with the team. It's also really important to show your extracurricular skills. So things like playing the piano, whether that's a sport, something that's going to make you a rounded person. So you really just want to sell all of your skills and not just your academic ones. A really great website that I used was What Makes a Good Doctor on the Medical School Council website, and this has a list of all of the skills that they look for in a future doctor. So things like empathy, kindness. Really good to try and include a few of these in your personal statement and what you've done to show that you are a kind person or shown that you're an empathetic person, and just sell the best version of yourself. So the next step is the entry exams. Yeah, not only do you have to pass your actual exams, you have a whole separate medical school entry exam, which people honestly dread. So you have the UCAT or the BEMA, and they are both like aptitude tests. But don't be fooled. My biggest tip is for those people that say you can't prepare for these tests, you can prepare for these tests. In fact, you can prepare really quite well. Before I started preparing, I did one exam and I honestly did awfully, and I ended up doing really well in these exams. So you do need to prepare, and that is honestly my biggest tip. Please prepare. I left about 6 weeks, and I would say anything from 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how well you think you want to prepare, is crucial for both of these exams. I only took the UCAT because the BMAT is only used for a handful of medical school universities. So you need it if you're going to be applying for Oxbridge, and I also know Leeds University take it and a couple of others, but the majority do use the UCAT. You can think about this when you're deciding where you want to apply to medical school and whether you think it's worth you taking just the UCAT or just the BMAT, or whether you want to go ahead and take both, because who doesn't want to do 2 exams? I'm not going to lie to you, this exam is really, really important. I think it makes a lot bigger part of your application than people actually elect on. Some universities have a full-on cut-off grade, and if you don't meet that UCAT score, then I really wouldn't apply there, because so many people just get rejected based on the fact they didn't get that grade. You might have an amazing personal statement, amazing A-level predicted grades, amazing GCSEs, but if you don't hit that UCAT score, then quite frankly, they're going to look at your score on a piece of paper and just put you in the no pile. I could do a whole video on how to achieve well in the UCAT, and if you do want to see that, then please comment below, and I would love to make that if you think you would find it helpful. But basically what the UCAT is a 5-part exam. So you've got verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, decision making, and situational judgment, and it is 2 hours unless you have extra time, and it is all done on computers, which is crucial in your preparation because you need to practice on a computer. That is one of my biggest tips. Practice on a computer, because this is not like your A-levels. You're not going to have room to just write or like scribble down or highlight things. It's all on a screen. Also, make sure you prepare little and often. So this is why I said you need about 4 to 8 weeks to prepare for it, because the most important thing is little and often. It's like brain training. You need to train your brain into doing a completely new style of exam, and the first part is just coping with this new style of technique. I hated this so much. I can't even explain to you. When I started doing these, I was like crying every time I had to go and do it, but it will get easier with time, I promise you. You just need to work at it and do a bit every single day. In terms of resources, I went out and got this, and this is the ISC Medical School 125. Now, this book is useless. So I got this book and I didn't even end up using it. I used it for a couple of questions, but it's just crazy hard. Like, it's so much harder than the real exam, and really there is little benefit in doing exams that are harder. Some people love this book, but for me, this just wasn't for me. What I did is I booked myself on one of the Kaplan courses, which I couldn't recommend more. Honestly, I think this is why I did it so well, and so many of their students do really well. It might be a bit pricey, but in my opinion, it really, really is worth it, because the day, the course, and then the resources they give after are just crucial in your preparation, and they really help you structure your time. At the end of the day, this is an exam that you are not used to, and they are the professionals and they understand what they are talking about. I would really recommend going and getting is the Kaplan UCAT strategy book. This is so useful. Just be prepared during your preparation. There probably will be a lot of tears, but just have faith, keep working hard, and you will get there, and it will get easier. Saying that, if you don't get a UCAT score that you're happy with or that you need, there are definitely ways around this, and please don't completely give up on your application or think that you can't get into medical schools. Getting into medical school, a lot of it really is on applying strategically and picking universities based on your strengths and your weaknesses. So if you do really poorly in the UCAT, but your A-levels and GCSEs are really high grade, you would be much better off picking universities like Birmingham or Nottingham that have a point system. So if you're quite a well-rounded person, but your UCAT score is just average, then I would apply to somewhere like there. Whereas if your GCSEs and A-levels aren't quite as good, but your UCAT score is really good, then you'd be much better off applying to universities that take the UCAT into quite good consideration. The universities will base the UCAT differently to others. So it's really important to pick your universities, not just based on ones you like, but ones you actually think you have a strong chance of getting in. Finally, you have done all of this and you have done most of the application, and you're on your final step, which is interview. Now, all medical schools do interview. You're not like your friends applying for different courses. You will get an interview, and the interviews are really important because they still need to cut down their number of applicants, and they only have a certain amount of offers to give, and you want to be the one on interview day that gets those offers and gets those places. Now, there are two different types of interviews, and you're going to have either a more traditional interview or an MMI, which is a multiple mini interview. And the majority of universities are now doing MMIs, apart from like Oxford and Cambridge and some of the London universities, I believe, but make sure you check on the website. I only had MMI interviews. Everywhere I applied to was only MMI, so I can only talk about that. But MMIs are basically 5 to 7 stations, and they're normally under 10 minutes each, and it's just in a big room, and you'll go around and do each of the MMIs. Now, each station will be completely different. These are going to range from questions on medical ethics, more traditional interview questions about yourself, scenarios, role plays. They really can throw anything at you that is medical related, so it's really important to prepare for your interviews. You might think, it's just a face-to-face thing, I can't prepare. No, preparation is key. And my biggest tool to prepare was this ISC Medical Schools interview book, and this is amazing. So I went through and wrote notes on every single topic that they have in the beginning, and then wrote notes on questions and questions about myself as well. And because you don't have a lot of time to prove yourself at interview, you want to make sure that you're not stuttering and you have all of these ideas straight at the top of your head. Somebody's not going to ask you, so why are you a good leader? And you'll go, You need to have your reasons. So I did Gold DV, I did this, I did it in my work experience, I did it in my job. You need to have a few basic questions prepared and a good understanding. It's also really important to have an understanding of medical ethics. The most important thing you need to learn are the 4 principles of medicine, or the 4 pillars of medicine, and those are autonomy, justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence. So you need to go out and find out what these are. And also, like, basic medical ethics is really important, because you could have a whole question about that. Also, it's so important to keep up to date in what is going on in the media, and especially in the medical profession at the moment. But you obviously know what's going on right now, and if not, then look back on the date, because I'm sure this period is going to be a significant date, 2020, that we all remember. Do some further reading. Go out and find what work they're doing to get a vaccine, or how they're going to find treatment, or how are they currently treating it in ICU at the moment. Just do as much reading and show a general interest. If medicine's something you're interested in, then you shouldn't find this too hard, and maybe subscribing to a scientific magazine like the New Scientist or a medicine journal, and just each day that you read it, take out a little snippet. I ended up collecting a whole little folder of newspaper articles, just so that before my interviews I had them easily handy, just to remind myself of what they were. So if they had any questions based on things that were going on in the news right now, or any scientific research that I found interesting, I could actually remind myself, and I had this handy. handy. Make sure you reread your journal or diary on work experience and really pick out key points where you've gone back and reflected on what you learned from that experience or learned about yourself or skills you've seen in other doctors. Just reread your little journal that you made during your work experience and just recap yourself on that. Finally, be confident. This is one thing I can't express enough. Just don't mumble, don't sit on your hands. Try and show confidence without arrogance. There's one thing to be sure in yourself and sure in your decision, and it's another thing to come across arrogant. There is a fine balance, but it's really important to make sure you do still sell yourself. At the end of the day, it's similar to your personal statement. You want to leave the room being remembered, being smiley, passionate, enthusiastic about it, really clear. And if you're mumbling and shy and nervous, I know it is a big moment going into interview, but you can still be passionate, enthusiastic. Just try and show your love for the subject. And if you truly do want to become a doctor, then it's so important for this to come through and explain your reasonings. And if you've gone out and done enough preparation, not only for your application, but also preparation for an understanding into what life as a doctor looks like, and really thought about why you want this to be your career, as hard as it can be, don't come across nervous and don't like look down or look in your hands. The biggest thing you can do is make eye contact, smile, speak clearly and with confidence. That is everything in my step-to-step guide, and I wish you all the best of luck. If you do follow these tips, then I'm sure you'll do so well with your application. And if you have any questions at all, then please comment below or feel free to contact me on my Instagram account, and I will get back to you with whatever help I can give you. It's not an easy process at all, believe me, I know, but you will get through it. And when you become a doctor, you'll look back on it and be really proud of yourself for getting yourself to that moment. So just work as hard as you can and prepare as much as you can, and be confident and have faith in yourself. If you believe it, they will believe it, and it will happen, and you will get into medical school and be at the university you want to go to. And I will see you all so soon, everybody. Bye.